We've got kind of a spread out staff and meeting today, so we will go through this. We have quite a bit to cover today. To begin with, let's call it to order. Let's do a roll call. I'm John Billiou. Go ahead.
City Clerk Fernando Gabriel Moraga.
Angela Dennis.
John Simonis. Russell Buck Fletcher.
Joshua Soulier.
Sean, are you there?
He's calling in, so it takes a while.
Sean Byers.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Margaret Stinson.
Janice Covars. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take that.
Very good. Thanks again for everybody's attending.
You know what? I think these are too hot for me.
This morning, or this evening, I'd like to do a flag salute. Would you mind leading us in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Like
of the United States of
United
America,
States, Louis.
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, there's a little flag there. That's cool. All right. Has everyone received a copy of the minutes?
Yes,
Has everybody
Yes.
had time to review them?
yes.
Yes.
Any questions, discussion? If not, I need a motion to approve.
I moved.
This is Josh. I motion to approve, or I second, whichever one you take.
Okay,
Motion to approve from Sean.
so we have quite a delay with the Zoom part.
They're,
Is there anything we can do about that?
they're talking over each other.
Okay.
That's the only difference that's going on. I think they can't hear us quite loudly. Not really much that we can do on our end about that.
Okay. So did you get the names of the,
Oh, okay.
There was two going on at the same time. It was
and take back. Use back.
We have a motion by Ms. Covars. A second is still needed.
I'll second it.
second.
That'll be Sean Byers. Okay,
Yeah.
those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will do what we typically have done, and we'll combine Measure H and Measure I reports. So we won't have so much repetition. And we will start out with, Jerry's not here today to talk about safety.
I'll give the report.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Jerry Hall wasn't able to attend tonight's meeting, and he asked me to report in his absence. So I'd like to begin by thanking Jerry for taking the time to introduce me to Chief Crodall and Captain Jake Costello yesterday. The three of them were kind enough to spend a few hours helping me become familiar with the system the department uses to categorize their expenses and answer my questions. I had a concern about Measure H under the vehicle maintenance category regarding the substantial increase in the shop fuel warehouse bill for March. Expenses in this category jumped from roughly $2,500 in January and February to over $30,000 for March. Chief Crodall explained this was an unfortunate month of expenses for in-house and outside repairs for multiple patrol vehicles. Jerry and I found this answer satisfactory. Otherwise, we did not find any inappropriate or irregular spendings for measures H and I. The department appears to be very helpful and transparent in their accounting practices, and I look forward to continuing to work with them.
Eric, did you have anything you'd like to add to it?
No, I would just like to appreciate her time in coming, and she was right, we spent some hours, and she asked very valid questions, good questions, and really explained to her how we do our systems, and really appreciate, somebody taking that time, not just rubber stamping, but really looking at our budget and making sure we're doing the right thing.
Very good. Thank you. Next, I'd like to have Sean Byers address fire.
Yeah, I met with Chief Lapeer on Monday. Everything looked to be in order. I believe Measure I had some questions on that as well. He explained on the training expenses, some of the start recommendations due to the fire last year. They will be adding a new position for him. It's a deputy chief, and they will also be adding some new start recommended equipment. All of his answers were satisfactory as well, and everything looked to be in order.
Okay, thank you. Chief Spear? Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I do not, other than I appreciate Sean Byers coming down, taking the time as well, and asking valid questions, and working through, understanding the SART that we've been through, and the new positions that we've brought forward from in the process that we're going through.
Very good, thank you. Thank you both. Next, we'd like to cover library with Margaret Stimson.
I'm going to take this down. I met with the librarian on Friday.
Use the microphone, Margaret.
Okay. They've been purchasing early literacy materials that will be utilized in the outreach vehicle whenever it's ready. And it looks like it's going to take a couple more months before it's ready. The staff launched a virtual book club for adults and will continue that every month via Zoom. They're also getting ready for a virtual summer reading program for children, teens, and adults to participate in. The staff has been processing material and so far has got 6,000 pieces processed. 8 part-time staff came back on duty in April to assist with the grab and go in the park. They're also assisting with processing of the materials. Now, the temporary children's library, it looks like that will not be ready at least till the end of the year because of problems with the building. But other than that, they're doing the best they can.
Okay. Donnie, are you out there? Okay.
City librarian, Mr. Cervantes is available if you have any questions.
Did you have anything you'd like to add to it?
I just want to say I want to thank Margaret for her time and everything that she hit upon on the highlights is in line with our budget areas and we're really great.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. Next, we'd like to cover streets with Josh.
Thank you. I had a conversation with Mr. Knight yesterday. We went over the numbers. The only real surprise was the unexpected cost for Henderson. The previous estimate had been somewhere close between $5 and $7 million, and it's closer to 10. But other than that, all of the numbers seem to be fairly consistent with what it should take to probably put down a large stretch of road.
What was the reason for the increase?
The one remark he did make about it was a surprise at prevailing wage.
Okay. Javier, are you here? Are you? Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, to expand on Mr. Souyer's comment, every time we open up to do underground work, sewer, water, storm drain pipe, it's all unknown, it's all covered, and besides the wages, that was probably the larger component of that increase. With several large, three of those mains, plus we're doing a recycled water pipe. We just ran into everything and anything out there, had to coordinate with Edison, the gas company, our own facilities. Pipes that had been abandoned previously, but had to go double check because we weren't sure. So a lot of those costs were borne because of all the underground contrivance. There's a term that you call, those unforeseen conditions. And, for that stretch of road and much construction we're doing, it was a bulk of the cost increase. Once we got out of that, everything on the surface has been pretty straightforward, concrete and asphalt. But it's about near, just the finishing touches being done.
Good. Yeah, I would guess there'd be a lot of, it's not really called a hidden treasure, it's more of a hidden, what the heck, huh?
I think this is where he says, wait until Main Street.
Yeah, that's gonna be a whole new,
Old Highway 65.
yeah. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the report. During those reports, I need a motion to approve the expenditures for Measure H. Do I have a motion?
This is Josh. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Josh. Is there a second?
This is Sean. I'll second.
Thank you, Sean. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Measure passes. For the, I need a motion to approve Measure I expenditures. Somebody like to make a motion to do that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you, Buck.
I'll second it.
You're saying,
Okay, thank you, John. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. It passes. Okay. Next, we have the review of preliminary budgets down for Measure H and a second item for Measure I. I call on John Lawless to explain that to us.
Great introduction, which is a little bit like flying the airplane while you build it. Obviously, the last year has been and continues to be very challenging as we stand here and wear face coverings and things of that nature. And as previously reported, talked about temporary library facilities, talk about unforeseen infrastructure underneath existing city streets. And then just certainly, all of the effects that the last 18 months have cast the city's way. So before you this evening and is a draft, you're seeing it before the city council has. They will be considering this draft. In fact, Ms. Bemis is still working, I would say, it's still, these budgets we feel pretty good about. We're working on, the other upwards of $200 million in budgetary elements that we anticipate being close to this next year. And so you have before you, with Measure H,
I wouldn't say anything extraordinary other than we continue to budget up to the 15% that's allowed under Measure H. You will notice that the expenditures have been down, and that's simply been because there hasn't been the library operation to support that. And I would say continuing to work through the insurance proceeds that comes with continuing to work through claims that have been submitted by the city through the different, there's different pools of insurance. There's at least 5 different pools that are available to the city through its insurance coverage. And as an example of that, in the interim facility, there's temporary equipment, which is not anticipated to be used in a future facility. There's permanent equipment, and these are out of separate funds that come through the city's coverage that is anticipated to be purchased. That would be in a permanent facility. We have a lease agreement for the use of a building for up to 6 years, and so the lease amounts would be covered through insurance, as well as tenant improvements of that shell building that's being improved and is currently under design for improvement. So under Measure H, I would say that's the single most kind of what's been different and has not been trending similarly is really on the library side, although we are still budgeting for it accordingly. And hasn't been different since the formation and establishment of Measure H. You will notice that the couple of different things we saw occur through sales tax, which both Measure H and Measure I are sales tax measures, is that two things happened. The first was what was called the Wayfair decision, which was in 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case that was brought by South Dakota, which challenged how online sales tax is collected. And it was heard by the Supreme Court in 2018, found in favor of the state of South Dakota, and it became rule of the land. California in 2019 established protocols for what's called the Wayfair decision. Wayfair is an online home goods retailer. And what the decision said is that unless the retailer has a brick and mortar location in a state, if they don't, then the sales tax, then the state sales tax shall be imposed and then distributed according to the formulas. So that was a favorable decision for online sales as it relates to retailers that don't have brick and mortar locations within certain states. And Wayfair is an example that is a completely online retailer. So any sales on Wayfair come back to the states that have sales tax. So that was first. And then second, certainly through the pandemic, saw an escalation of online sales. And so those two factors together, I would say, suggest the continued strength of sales tax collection. And so some of the measures that we were anticipating, not knowing what the economic futures were going to be, quite frankly, didn't happen. And so it's good to show that you have reserves. We're anticipating or estimating here that with expenditures next year, there could be upwards of a almost $2.2 million reserve in Measure H. Like I said, this is kind of more of a plan or the expenditure plan has been implemented according to what was approved by the voters. It's been approved by this committee. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Moving on to Measure I. Similarly, very strong sales tax results. You are seeing an accumulation of cash in that, but you're also, in the same regard, looking at large projects that are under design. In fact, as I'm have written the budget message for next year, There's $45 million in streets under design right now. And so obviously we don't have $45 million, so it's a matter of programming funds over multiple years, I would say over a 5-year horizon, to be able to achieve all of those projects. Within the Measure I, you'll see the streets that Measure I is attached to. Most notably, coming in the upcoming fiscal year is the reconstruction of Villa Street between Olive Avenue and Henderson Avenue. This will be a reconstruction. It also includes in a separate project, because of its environmental review, the replacement of the Slough Bridge into a box culvert. So it will not be a bridge any longer. It'll end up becoming a box culvert in its final construction. So that's as far as I feel comfortable describing that as a non-engineer. I defer to Mr. Sanchez after that. That box culvert, just as an example, is $1 million improvement just for that particular, that's the number that we've attached to that. So that's the largest street project. There are other street projects that are going to construction next year, well, I'll say within this next fiscal year, which is Newcomb Street between Olive and Morton. And we have a rehabilitation project on Henderson between Patsy and Westwood, I think is the other that we're anticipating probably being ready. Are there other streets that you're looking at? Ready to go? Okay. We have Grand Avenue, which is an environmental review right now, which is to improve actually make a connection between 4th Street and Hanrahan, and then improve Hanrahan to Plano Street. So that's another project that we have. Again, there are multiple funding sources that we have attached to this. Specifically out of Measure I is Villa Street's reconstruction, and I think there's a estimated $2.5 million or so that's allocated. And that does not include the separate project because of environmental concerns of the Porter Slough and the Slough Bridge and the box culvert to replace the Slough Bridge. So that's, I would say most notably that there is cash being accumulated. The good news is, and there's also other good news. The committee will recall we talked about transit, under the CARES Act, transit funds that had been received by the city. It was about $7.6 million of transit funds, which a decision was made by council to take $6 million of that $7.6 million to fully fund transit for the next 3 years, which by doing that increased what's called the local transportation funds or LTF funds by $2 million. Because under state law, you have to fund your transit before you can do road improvements. So by using the grant funds that were provided through the Federal CARES Act to fully fund transit, provided $2 million a year over, that's the approximate cost of operating transit is $2 million of LTF. So whatever that cost is of transit, the Federal CARES Act transit funds are being applied for the next, this will be year 2 that we come into. And so that's an additional $2 million last year that went into, that LTF is able to have for additional road improvements. We anticipate the same to be for this coming next fiscal year and then the year beyond that. The county of Tulare has made a claim to the city's, part of the city's grant funds, which we will be working through on that. So stay tuned on how those negotiations go. So, so that's kind of a broad sweep over roads. With PD, I would say the biggest change that we're looking at, and it's being split proportionally between general fund, Measure H, and Measure I, according to the personnel that's assigned to those different funds, is we are at the end of our 5-year agreement on body cameras, which was with TASER, which is now known as Axon. 5 years goes by quickly. We were an early adopter of body cameras, and that 5-year agreement comes to an end this fall. We've entered into, with council's approval, a 10-year extension of that, taking advantage of some reduction of costs by doing that. In addition, and essentially the cost is doubling of that, which was about, I don't know, 75,000, 80,000 a year?
Getting close to 90 with the additional.
Okay, so, which is doubling, just in and the technology is getting better as well. There's a lot of added features that are coming with the extension of the contract and the unlimited data storage and things of that nature. But the other component that has been added at the direction of council and approved was to also incorporate dash cams into the cars, as well as a camera that is activated into the back seat when there's a passenger. And also provides a number of added benefits for real-time viewing of video from inside the car, and a lot of coordination amongst the cameras and the technology that's there. So the net result of that, I think, we've gone from about 90,000 to about 250,000, and again, that's distributed based on the personnel. These are going to be those that are, I don't know, how many units are you looking at? 50, 55?
At 70 cameras and 50 units.
Okay. Yeah. So, so each of the vehicles will have dash cams and the cameras put into the back seat, and then all of the body cameras will be upgraded as well, which also come with GPS now on them. That's been so there's been a lot of technological upgrades that the police department has made in terms of we've upgraded our CAD RMS system, there's just been a lot of upgrades, and appreciate the funding that's been able to be provided by Measure I, Measure H, and certainly the general fund in support of that. You know, on the fire side is where I would anticipate the greatest expansion of funding, which we're anticipating upwards of $1 million over time. The reason I say over time, and this was referenced as part of Mr. Byers and Chief Lapierre's staff report talking about the SART recommendations. So the SART report from the library incident, fire incident, was released April. And in there, one of the recommendations dealt with personnel. And let me begin by saying the Porterville Fire Department, prior to this, already was what's called, and there's something in the world called the ISO, which is the Insurance Service Organization. They are who analyze fire departments for insurance ratings. And the Porterville Fire Department is what's called a Class 2 department. And that goes from Class 1 to Class 9. And that there's a factor of available personnel on shift, goes to your water system and the availability to do fire suppression. There's just a number. It's actually, as we talk at the staff level, or how this is one of the important things we talk about, our water department and the fire department, and ensuring that hydrants are operational, that they have the pressures to them. And so ISO comes every 3 years to do that analysis. And by its last review, it was a Class 2, which actually places it in the top 1% of fire departments in the United States. There's 25,000 fire departments in the United States, of which Porterville is one of 250 that are Class 2 or better. And it has been an goal and objective of the Porterville Fire Department to become a Class 1, which puts you in the top 100 fire departments in the United States. There's only 100 that are Class 1 or so. And so I know that's a goal and objective of Chief Lapierre, and has been prior to the library fire. But again, that goes to, and as part of other, the casino relocation had agreements for the Tule River Tribe to form a fire department. This is one of the reasons that Chief Lapierre and members of council had gone in advocacy of the casino project as the Tule Tribe wanting to establish a fire department as part of its casino project. We championed it because there's additional personnel, and that was how we were going to get to become a Class 1 department. Why do we want to be a Class 1 department? Because that's how your fire insurance rates are established. The better a class you have, the lower your fire insurance rating. I can tell you this because my wife's family and us had a cabin in Ponderosa, which we were paying $2,000 a year for fire insurance, and that's Class 9 because of proximity to a fire response, being in a wildland area, there's just a number. And so the benefit, the economic benefit of our community and having a strong, that strong of a department has been realized. And so I give that as a foundation to the SART, which talked about the National Fire Prevention Association, NFPA, having its what's called minimum manning. So what that means is that if what is it on shift, that allows people to be out on vacation, because we can have a full shift that exceeds that, but how many people do you have on shift at a minimum? And that was and so again, everything was lowest common denominator, and what I call lowest common denominator. What's the worst case that's happening? Not the best case. You know, we may have 16 people on shift, but what's the worst case? And so that was one of the findings there of bringing our minimum manning up to the recommended NFPA standards. So with that is the hiring of 6 additional firefighters. And instead of just coming before you and saying, you know, we're just going to make those part of Measure I or Measure H, the fire department has applied for what's called a federal SAFER grant, which is to provide additional personnel, which for a 3-year period of time, if funded, and I think we have great confidence that it will be, that those 6 personnel will be fully funded for 3 years. So for next fiscal year and the succeeding 2 fiscal years, those 6 fire personnel would be fully funded. If it is not, should we not be successful in that grant, which I believe we will be successful, but we would be back before you to talk about Measure I. And what I would propose is that in the 4th year, because they become your responsibility 4 years later, that it would be a Measure I or Measure H. We can work through what we think is the best mix for that at the committee's recommendation. But there are 6 personnel. In addition to that, one of the findings was that the chief cannot serve well in both an administrative and operations role, as is the current case. We have the fire chief is the administrator of the department, but there isn't an operational buffer between him and the battalion chiefs that are on shift. If you understand how the chain. So their recommendation was to add a deputy chief position in charge of operations to separate the administrative functions and the operational functions of the department. Because quite frankly, the day of this incident, Chief Lapierre was running operations. He was on vacation and came in when he recognized the incident was ongoing and took over operations. And so this will allow for better preparedness, and I would say also for redundancy in the organization from a critical incident and who is running operations on an incident. So the 6 personnel, the 6 personnel, deputy chief, associated vehicles and equipment, cumulatively is about $1 million. And but the good news is I do believe I'll apologize profusely if I am surprised we're not awarded the grant. But I do believe that for the next 3 years, and the benefit of that is that that provides additional funds for other street projects, quite frankly, given that's been the priority of the city council, and that the expenditure of funds be allocated to public safety and streets.
So both the staffing positions and the additional equipment is all covered, will all be covered if these funds come through?
So the deputy chief, so the SAFER grant cannot apply to administration. It has to be operational personnel. Who's going to actually be on, which a deputy chief would not be doing daily operations, so it's not an eligible position. So it is separate. It is incorporated in the Measure I budget as a new position.
Okay.
as deputy chief. And it comes attached with a vehicle. I wouldn't say it has any specialized equipment, but your question's a good one in terms of the equipment for the supporting personnel, which we would be purchasing for them. And I want to say that's about 5,000. That seems high. Help me, Dave.
Are we talking about per firefighter?
For the 6, right? So.
For 6, we're probably looking at $3,000 per turnout, so we might be doing $10,000 per person.
Well, see, there you go. So 10, I was half off, 60 grand. So, and we'll figure that. You know, the important part is securing the grant, happy to answer. That's kind of the full scope of Measure H and Measure I.
You talked about some kind of interesting things here as far as the different classifications of the ISO. First I've heard of it. Is this worth putting information out? A lot of people have negative things to say about Porterville, but there's some really cool positive things. Are you guys doing anything to kind of market or somehow get this information out to the public in general, or already have you and I just missed it, or?
It's on our website for the fire department right now, and we are revamping the website to be showcasing that we are a Class 2 department in that as well. Just like the city manager said, it's a thing to draw in economic development as well. If we pay less for insurance, you're more distributed income, which the public lines are, and that goes into tax base because it's a circle deal. But yeah, we definitely, we had when we awarded the Class 2 classification, it was put out on Facebook, and it is showcased in our webpage.
Okay.
It will be in the revision of the new webpage as well.
Okay.
And we are streaming, and hopefully, with casino help, and like the city manager said, we are striving to be a Class 2 department. Absolutely.
Yeah, and can the city always better trumpet its, yeah, I would, one of the challenges is typically, self-promotion is sometimes a challenge for folks. So understanding, and that's why I wanted to, because that part of it gets lost in the noise sometimes of that the department wasn't broken. It was very high performing by independent assessment according to fire response. And now, can it be better? And that's what was identified. And that, and there's a number, over the next 5 years, I would say, plus is going to be, and this is one of the also important functions of the deputy chief position, is ensuring the implementation of, with the chief, the implementation of the 80 or so recommendations for, which much of it is training, and just not local training, it's training across this county. And as an example, the ability to access some of this training that is being, large commercial structure, as an example, isn't available in Tulare County because those kinds of fires, quite frankly, don't happen here. So how do you develop that training then? And I put all my colleagues on notice that they are, this SART speaks to all of us. And that's one of the elements of Tulare County is how we are spread apart. When time of crisis for Porterville, Tullare's 30 minutes away and Visalia is 45, and the county sends 1. So you're on your own. So how do we better bolster that in light of knowing that you're on an island, and how do you ensure, as I shared, already well recognized, but how can it be improved? And those are the recommendations of talking about raising that minimum bar up to the recommended standard, which is 2 additional per shift, plus implementing a deputy chief that will be responsible for the operational and training of the department in accordance with those recommendations.
It'd be nice somehow to get that information, because it doesn't benefit individual segments of the citizenry. It affects everybody in a very positive way.
In those recommendations, one of the questions that council has had, which we said, so the fire department does an annual report. And in that annual report, which I think you do this summer, right? You do the,
We'll be bringing out
yeah, so in the annual report, which would be for 2020, which it falls about 6 months behind, you said?
yeah, COVID slows down a little bit, but we'll have it in the next 2 months.
Yeah, so in there, we'll begin the Gantt chart, if you will, of the, here's the different recommendations, and then as they are accomplished, or the horizons of when, or the timelines for them to be completed. And then kind of the accountability report card to that.
Okay. Any questions for John?
Or the departments, they actually do the work.
Any questions for the people that do the work?
More knowledgeable about their operations than I am.
Okay. Well, John, I thank you very much for your time.
Oh, my thank you to the committee for I appreciate your, the time that you spend in these efforts. And I really want to thank those that I work with. Maria Bemis, who's sitting in the back very quietly, knows where every penny is. And when she doesn't, won't sleep until she finds it. So I just can't speak to, and here's what I mean, there's so many things going on right now. It's just pretty, between, and large, I call them large rocks. There's just really large things that we're trying over the next 5 years to get done. Obviously streets, you're seeing, pretty significant work product. Javier sometimes takes his breath away when we say, well, we got another project for you, Javier. So, but in our streets, plus I anticipate an infrastructure bill to be passed, which will also provide additional federal funds for, those are just things, conversations you and I can read about in the newspaper or on the internet, but there is going to be an infrastructure bill, and there will be additional funds, whether they come through the state or whether they come by direct allocation to the city for additional infrastructure, primarily streets. But with the casino project relocation and just trying to move to tertiary treatment and push that ball and now being in drought. And by the way, this drought's already worse than 2015. So buckle up and hold on. I know that doesn't have anything to do with this committee, but understand water is going to be a very critical issue for the next year or two.
Very good.
I do want to think that we are better prepared than we were in 2015, but we'll find out. So, again, happy to answer any questions and appreciate all the work in preparing for this.
All right, thank you. We need to have a motion to, unless there's any discussion, we need to have a motion to accept the preliminary review of the preliminary report for Measure H.
If I may.
Go ahead, John.
I don't know, I don't mean to
That's fine.
disagree with the chair. I don't know that a motion's necessary. This has been to avoid discrepancies in the, here's what we're proposing. The council hasn't approved this yet.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying I don't know that what would be helpful is for me to be able to tell the council, and I should have said this, I apologize. Process is, this is a draft budget that the council will see consistent with their priorities that they established. They'll review it at its meeting next Tuesday. They'll provide direction, is what I would say. They won't act on it. They'll schedule a public hearing for June 15th, which then there'll be a public hearing, and then they'll take final action on it. So the council will not be taking action on this budget on next Tuesday night. They will simply be considering it, providing direction, scheduling public hearing. Our commitment to this committee to avoid errors in the past, which was, it would have been nice if you told us what you were doing on, because it makes our job a little more difficult, is to be ahead of it and say, here's what's being presented to the council. Is there anything in here that is of concern to the count, is there anything of concern in the proposed budget that we should make the council aware of?
Okay.
I guess that's, so it would be helpful if there is any of concerns like that, that we can express those to the council when they consider it. And again, they won't be taking action on it until June 15th.
Are there any concerns that, as laid out in the proposed budget? All right. Thank you. We're down to other matters. We need to, I've got a couple on my list. We need to, I wanted to wait until after we got through this fiscal year, but it's time to reorganize a little bit. Maybe rotate some positions around, look at a few things. I'm working on a plan. I'll contact you guys individually about it, and then we'll discuss it in general at the next meeting, which should be set for sometime in August. It's usually the last Wednesday, right? So the last Wednesday in August is the 25th. How does that look for everybody?
Looks good.
Is that a Wednesday?
Fine, as far as I can tell.
Is that a Wednesday?
Should be good.
Okay. All right, John, are we still going to have it here? I ask all the right questions, don't I?
Oh, I wish I was a fortune teller. If things go as has been telegraphed by the state, I think it'd be great to be able to, as this committee did before, as it rotated its meetings amongst the library, police department, fire, so you had an opportunity to see the different facilities that are captured in the budget. So corporation yard, I mean, you're going to see the operation that Mr. Knight runs out there. So the hope would be, here's what I could say tentatively. The one challenge we have, and I do think this is going to be, there's legislation that's been introduced that, as we're doing this evening, we are broadcasting this on our YouTube channel, which has an ability for people to listen electronically. And so wherever, it would be great if we could go, for example, to the police department, or when the temporary library is established, have a meeting there, so that the committee can have the ability to, tangibly feel the different facilities that are supported through these measures. And, but we will, Fernando here will be challenged with how do we continue to support what I believe are going to be regulatory commitments we have to make in providing electronic access to the meetings as a Brown Act body. So, but I'd like to say that, yes, we could meet in a different location if you would like. I believe that's how things are trending. And so you may want to consider meeting at the police department, or you could do that tentatively. And I mean, worst case, you're in council chambers.
Well, we'll let that develop a little bit and then let everybody know where it's going to be. In the regardless of how that works out with the rotation, I would like to start up some type of a process where we can take people through, if that doesn't work, and do a tour, maybe one department at a time or one location at a time, and with the approval of the city, take everybody through so we can have kind of an in-depth look at what everybody's doing. Just makes it simpler and easier for everybody.
If I may, talking about the different technology, maybe, I'm going to make the case. Well, I wanted to say also something. So you're retiring.
Oh. Well, congratulations.
Wilson, I didn't put the August meeting
But the police department would be a good place to meet in August.
Okay,
And be able to see some of the things that we're talking about and the different improvements that have been made to better support the community.
all right, good. Well, we'll tentatively set it for the police department. Seems like, Chief, we ought to let you say a few words here. I'm not sure it's appropriate or not, but is there anything you'd like to say to address?
I will have things to say. I mean, if, you know, when it comes up, I will have a number of things to say over time. But just as far as, in relation to this committee, you know, we certainly appreciate it. You know, it does take time, for folks to come in unpaid and just to give their time to the community, give their time to these committees and take part in it. You know, it's important that we are looked at. For this city and for these departments, I think it's not as important to find things that are being done wrong, because they are not. There's so many levels of things that go, of reviews that go on. For example, we put our best foot forward. Then the city manager sees them. And then the lady that talks a lot in the back there, she's very eagle-eyed on it. So this committee, what's as important in making sure we're doing the right job is that the community sees that you are overseeing us, overseeing our budget and looking at our budget and making sure we're doing the right job. Because we can say it all day long, but when you folks go out there and say, hey, I'm part of that committee, I looked at it and they're doing the right thing, that carries a lot of weight. You know, especially for you folks that have a lot of contacts out in the community. And that's just as important. It's just important. And I think the fact that if you look at Measure H, how we handle it over the years, and put that forth, and that committee being able to say, hey, they've been doing what they said, that played a part in getting Measure I passed, because there was no controversies with how we were spending the money. The money wasn't diverted. It wasn't taken and being spent for things that we didn't say it was supposed to be spent for, that the community didn't want it spent for. But this committee being able to go out and say that, I think that played a part in Measure I passing. So I certainly appreciate all the work that you do, that you will be doing, you know, as you come on board. You know, and like I said, I told Ms. Dennis yesterday, I said, come look at us. I mean, you know, I think we're doing it right, but if we did do something wrong, we shouldn't be offended if somebody points it out. You know, we should fix it. So definitely appreciate everything that all the committee has done for us over the years.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your service. Other comments? Other matters? Seeing none, I will go ahead and bring this meeting to an end. Thank you very much.